Well, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters in our common humanity, thank you very much for having me here this evening and for being here. It's a great pleasure to be with this venerable society once again. I've been here once before, and in this hallowed chamber. Now, the question we have before us this evening is whether the legacy of Mother Theresa is one of good and should be honoured in this place tonight. Janie's done a great job in establishing the facts of Missionaries of Charity and some other facts about Mother Theresa. What I want to do in my time tonight is look at Mother Teresa's legacy on a human level, to illustrate the undeniable good that she accomplished, and which no reasonable person could fail to honour. In doing this, I have to start by apologising to you all that I am here, rather than other people. You may have noticed on your term card and the poster outside that in fact one of the speakers who was meant to be here was not in fact myself, but there was in fact another chap called Gautam Lewis in defence of Mother Teresa. Unlike Janie, I never had the honour to meet Mother Teresa, but Mr. Lewis did for a formative and important part of his childhood. Born in Calcutta and afflicted with polio at 18 months, when he was 3, he was taken in by Mother Teresa and the sisters to their home for children in Calcutta. He lived with Mother Teresa and the Missionaries of Charity for around 4 years, so at age 7 he was adopted by Patricia Lewis, who is one of this country's greatest experts on arms control. And he lived a very happy life thereafter. But Lewis is now 41, and he's a certified pilot. It's something that came about due to his fascination with flight. This was a longing of his to feel lifted from his disability from polio. He lived with Mother Teresa for those few years, and this inspired him in that, which I'll go on to talk about. Now, he trains other people at the moment with disabilities to fly through Freedom in the Air, a charity founded that he says is about challenging stereotypes, particularly to do with disability. And before that, he was in music. He actually managed the Libertines, the Hives, the Kills, but he gave up all of that to help others. Now, why is this the case? How has this happened? Well, the reason why that's the case and why it's possible is because Lewis says, following advice that Mother Teresa gave him in a private mass just months before she died in September 1997, he recalls her saying, "Nothing is difficult, just different. If you can't find someone to help you do whatever it is you want to do, just do it on your own." And of course, I think that's part of the moral of her life, per se, certainly her mission. But Lewis says he applied her advice and her wisdom throughout his own life. The reason she could give him this life-changing, in fact, life-defining advice, was because of the care that she and the other sisters gave him at the most difficult time. In his personal story, due to his impairment, he had to go through painful corrective surgery and experience strong feelings of isolation and loneliness, particularly because, for whatever reason, his family didn't come to visit him ever during his time in the orphanage. I don't think he ever saw them again. He recalls crying for hours at the orphanage. And Mother Teresa called in a psychiatrist to help. This helped him, and she remained, he says, a watchful guardian during that darkest period. He recalls how Mother Teresa would look after, quote, her little children, saying of her that Mother Teresa to me was a guardian angel that I desperately needed at that point in time. He further went on to say that their relationship was fueled by her love of God and her commitment to the dignity of the human race. Everybody, the poor, the hungry, the throwaway of the society, the crippled, and I fitted all of those, he said. And it was due to this formative care and love that he received when he could otherwise have been at the bottom of the scrap heap of what Pope Francis rightly called the throwaway society. It's much truer in the East as it is in the West. On the occasion of the canonization of the woman he called his second mother, Lewis was in Calcutta to exhibit a series of photographs about her, about his own childhood, met the people who are now at the orphanage that is continually being run, and he now helps those who are deprived as he has once been. Gautam's story is just one of the countless that pepper this planet of the legacy of the good of Mother Teresa, not just in affecting his own life, but as ripples on a lake, affecting all the lives of the people that he has now positively affected through his own work, inspired by the example of Mother Teresa, people with physical impairments. So you don't need to believe me, however, or Gautam Lewis alone, to see all this good. But the countless witnesses to Mother Teresa's works, and those of her truest legacy, the Missionaries of Charity, foremost amongst those are those from India, the place where she principally works. Take Navin Chawla. Navin Chawla was an Indian civil servant, is an Indian civil servant. He wrote a biography of Mother Teresa, called Mother Teresa, who said that his work with Missionaries of Charity, quote, made him a different person. But Mother Teresa, he says, she pushed me to be in contact with the poor around me. She was able to touch something in me and has done so with hundreds of thousands of people by setting a good example. Chawla reports of Mother Teresa's self-denial in concentrating on the poor for whom she cared. He said, there is no television, video, fax machine, even an oven or a toaster. She even refused a washing machine. Chawla reports of Mother Teresa's helpers as well, those who were her nuns, those were the helpers with them. Like her nuns, says Laurie Sham, Mother Teresa lived simply. They own only 3 saris, sleep on thin mattresses, wash their clothes by hand and sit on chapel floors. Chawla speaks admiringly of the many co-workers or volunteers, which includes many Hindus. In fact, he actually says that of all these different co-workers, you've got doctors and nurses and dentists and other medical professionals inspired by, again, her example. But of those, for every one Christian, there were 10 Hindus. This was not simply a religious matter. This is people more generally being inspired by what Mother Teresa did. And what did these nuns and volunteers do? Well, Chawla reports that they were, quote, constantly on their hands and knees, scrubbing the floors, changing bedclothes, mopping urine-soaked beds, feeding or holding sick people. He discusses the homes for children, the dying and lepers. Schools function not only as simple residences for sickly, premature children, but providing nursery and primary education in places in the world where it's desperately needed. The cost of education, he says, including uniforms and books, is entirely met by the missionaries of charity. Mother Teresa, he further accounted, tried especially hard to establish these in each of her leprosy centres. The children brought to these homes are often infants who are, quote, are unable to survive premature births, attempted abortions, or the aftermath of drug abuse by expectant mothers. Often these are children who, like Gautam Lewis himself, had severe physical and mental impairments. Some, according to Catherine Spink in her authorised biography of Mother Teresa, recounts, were found in garbage cans and drains. Others simply abandoned on railway platforms. Nearly all were suffering from acute malnutrition and tuberculosis. All were crying out for love, end quote. And when people asked Mother Teresa and the nuns why they would bother with such children who were going to die anyway, she answered back insistently and indignantly, I don't understand this. For me, even if a child dies within minutes, that child must not be allowed to die alone and uncared for. She was often quoted as saying, if there is an unwanted baby, don't let it die. Give it to me. Now, gradually, this word spread. Children would be given to Shashi Bhavan, the first school that she founded, by social workers, by doctors, by the police, finally by hospitals as well. And she similarly cared for those dying of AIDS. In the 1980s, she founded New York's first AIDS hospice in Greenwich Village and successfully pushed for the release of 3 prisoners from the Sing Sing prison who were suffering from that debilitating disease, who were then given a new home. New York City Mayor Ed Cox was blown away by her kindness and actually she said that when AIDS patients were near death, she would sit at their bedside. Often they would take her hands and place her fingers on their faces, wanting for her to feel their lesions and to close their eyelids for the last time. All this work continues today in the missionaries of charity and the volunteers, Christian or not, who help them. This is the legacy of Mother Teresa, and it is one of undeniable good. But nonetheless, there are those who try, like Mr. Cave, to deny this on really quite ridiculous bases. We heard she was self-serving because she does good works in order to get to heaven. I'm sorry, if Mother Teresa believed that, she would have been a Pelagian. A Pelagian is a Christian heretic who thinks they can earn their way to heaven. That's not the way salvation works in Christianity. And the fact that Mr. Cave thinks that shows how ignorant he is, I'm sorry, of Christianity per se, and particularly of Mother Teresa, not just that, but also the Trinity, I would suggest as well. She said, she told people to accept their lot and put up with evil. Bollocks. Utter bollocks. I'm sorry, but she did something about evil. She didn't accept it. She didn't accept suffering. She went and did something about it by helping the most needy people in society, by giving them the love that other people otherwise would never have given them. That's what Mother Teresa did. Then we're talking about apparent damage she did. She opposed contraception and abortion. She believed in redemptive suffering. In other words, she was a Catholic. So in other words, if you're a Catholic, no one can honour your legacy because you support teachings that Mr. K finds unacceptable. Now, we're not here to debate contraception and abortion. I don't have the time to do that. I'll try to deal with it in my ending statement. But nonetheless, ladies and gentlemen, you're really suggesting that no Catholic can be honoured if that's the case. And I'll deal with that later. Hypocrisy because she believed in redemptive suffering, had a theodicy in which she thought suffering was necessary for compassion to come about. Well, again, we're not discussing or debating here the rights and wrongs of redemptive suffering any more than we are abortion and contraception, and I would be happy to come back and debate those subjects. But regardless, Redemptive suffering was the meaning that she gave to many of those people at the end of their lives, in which otherwise they would have had nothing, no meaning to their suffering whatsoever. This didn't hurt anyone, this didn't damage anyone, this gave them meaning. And if you don't believe in redemptive suffering or the church's teachings on sex, fine, fair enough. But you can at least respect the fact that it gave people solace at the very end of their days who would otherwise have lacked it. So none of these criticisms are reasonable criticism, ladies and gentlemen. They fail utterly to deny the good that she did do. So I'll simply end by simply saying this. Unless every single one of you here, or at least you as an individual, have done anything anywhere near the kind of self-sacrificial love and care that Mother Teresa and the missionaries of charity give to people in the poorest parts of the world, if you are doing that, then I think you have a right to in some way judge her for whatever faults you may think she had. But I think that if you're being morally serious, and I'll end on this point, then you cannot utterly deny that the good that she did in some way was outdone by whatever disagreements you might have with the things she thought, the things she taught, and the things that she believed as part of theology. If that's all you've got, well, ladies and gentlemen, I suggest very strongly you have no grounds whatsoever, but other than to support this motion tonight. It is obviously very clear. Mother Teresa's legacy was one of good and deserves absolute honour in this house. Thank you.